Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this morning's session for Global Entrepreneurship Week on how to build an innovation ecosystem. We're going to give everyone an opportunity to jump into the room, and then we'll go ahead and get started. Fantastic. Well, good morning and welcome. Before we jump into today's session, I'd love to introduce CJ Cornell, who's the chapter lead for this Arizona's Global Entrepreneurship Week. CJ Cornell. CJ, if you'd like to go ahead and say good morning and hello. I know that you have some intro slides and discussion that you'd like to offer.
Okay, good. And thank you, everybody. And hopefully, Mark, you can flip the slides maybe when I give a signal.
Yep.
That would be. Hi, I think I know almost everyone here, but welcome. And this is either the penultimate or the ultimate event for the week. We've had between 10 and 15 events for Global Entrepreneurship Week Arizona, which is one of the highest showings for any state. But for those who don't know what Global Entrepreneurship Week is or haven't heard me give an intro before, Global Entrepreneurship Week is been going on for the last 11 years. It's sponsored by the Kauffman Foundation and Global Entrepreneurship Network. It's right now going on in 170 different countries. How many knew there was 170 countries even out there? 9 million people and 35,000 events. So this is really huge. And it's all about celebrating entrepreneurship, small business, and the people that support them, the advisors, the economic development folks, all of you. So I thank you all for being here. Let's go to the next slide. This next slide was actually to tell people about all the other events, but this is pretty much, I think, the last event. But we will be posting videos and slides on the Global Entrepreneurship website so that you can review what's been going on. I will post a link when I can walk and chew gum at the same time here in the chat area. Let's go to the next one. I do want to give a shout out to all the folks that have helped us, our partners and our sponsors. Thank you, Arizona Commerce Authority. You're the one giving this particular one. SeedSpot, Chandler Innovation, Startup Tucson, Grand Canyon, University, Arizona State. We all came together. This has been something that we've been working on for 6 months, maybe more, that came to fruition this week. And we are, I can say that for most states, we've been the envy in how we really pulled it all together. So thank you, all our partners. And I want to just give a quick shout out. Since this is all virtual events, we haven't had a need for too many sponsors, but I wanted to give a shout out to one sponsor because they're a kind of a new up and coming company called Atomic Social. And they do social media, web design, and search engine optimization. I'll post a link to their site because it's quite stunning what they do for entrepreneurs and for small businesses out there. And so with that, that's all I needed to say. And by the way, stay tuned for Global Entrepreneurship Week 2021. Never too early for that. But I think thank you, everyone. I think we all did a fantastic job pulling this together, particularly since it's all virtual and no one ever was in the same room while planning this. So thank you all, and back to you, Mark, for the last event of the week.
No pressure. Well, thank you, CJ, for that introduction, and thank you for all your hard work and leadership in helping put on this global event. I know we're proud in Arizona to have contributed so much to the conversation, and I'll try and do my best to close it out with a bang. So today's topic is building an innovation ecosystem, which is something that is really pertinent to communities across the world right now. We know that technology, startups, innovation are the key to the economic future. And so here in Arizona, we've put a lot of thought into how to develop that. This session specifically is going to focus on sort of a public agency's role in building out that innovation ecosystem and how we engage our partners across it to really gain momentum. So as CJ mentioned, my name is Mark Mormons. I'm the Senior Vice President of Entrepreneurship and Venture Development at the Arizona Commerce Authority. He also mentioned we're one of the sponsors for Global Entrepreneurship Week, which will be relevant in the discussion that we have today and how we partner with community groups like CJ's. I've also joined with a great panel of experts today. We'll spend the second half of today's conversation kind of speaking to an investor, a founder, a mentor, and a community builder. And if you're joining us from Arizona, some familiar faces of leaders in our community. So the Arizona Commerce Authority is charged with driving economic development in the state. And we like to think about that under 3 buckets around business attraction, business expansion, and business creation. My world and the world of kind of entrepreneurship is in that business creation bucket. And so we like to focus on startups, founders, small businesses, and just really entrepreneurship as a way to build the economy of the future here in Arizona. And we have been doing that over the past 10 years when we've really started focusing on these areas. We've launched a number of programs, initiatives that have started to put Arizona on the map as a tech hub here in the Southwest. Some accolades that kind of prove that point out. We were recently featured in Crunchbase, where venture dollars are on the rise here in Arizona. We've got a $25 billion impact of tech companies here in the state. And we are the #2 fastest growing economy in the country. And so we're really proud of the momentum that we've gotten. And this really was an intentional effort on behalf of the Commerce Authority, the state, and all of the players involved in making this happen. So how did we do it? The ACA's job is really about building connective tissue within the entrepreneurial ecosystem. CJ mentioned Kauffman Center and putting on GEW. Kauffman talks a lot about that connective tissue piece within entrepreneurship. And so who are those stakeholders and how are we connecting them is kind of a big question that we think about. And so it's really about bringing to the table founders and entrepreneurs, mentors, investors, and those community groups and community builders that are really the fabric of an innovation ecosystem. Those groups are the strategic drivers of innovation in any community. And so our role as an economic development agency, as the ACA, is to identify, support, and engage those different groups. And how do we do that? We do it through a number of different avenues dependent on the stakeholder group. And the takeaway is you can't focus on any one of these individual groups because one is not enough. If you just put your resources into founders and entrepreneurs and you ignore the mentors, the investors, the community builders, your innovation ecosystem isn't going to take hold. The sum is greater than the whole of the parts, and you really need to find ways to engage and support all of these groups simultaneously so that they're growing and thriving off of one another. It becomes a virtuous cycle. And our public agency approach is to kind of be the spark that gets that virtuous cycle moving. So before we jump in, I'd love to kind of ask a question, keep this a bit interactive, of who is on the call today. If you want to just throw in the chat window about which of these buckets you fall into, and that'll give myself and our panelists an idea of kind of who's joining us and help share the perspective that's on the call. So go ahead, just throw in A, B, C, or D. Mention if you're an entrepreneur, founder, maybe an investor, community builder. Would love to hear from you. We've got some community builders. That's great. I love that. CJ, all 4. Some founders, welcome. Hello, Karen from Invest Southwest, a very important community builder. And some more founders and entrepreneurs. Fantastic. We'll keep those coming. I'd love to see how many founders are on here because, as you'll hear me say in a moment, those are sort of the lifeblood of any innovation ecosystem. You can throw all the energy and resources at any community that you want, but if you don't actually have the founder and startup business, the building block, the foundation, you're not going to get very far. So let's jump from here. For founders, I'd love to ask, and we have some on the call, what are the resources or supports that you think are most valuable from a public partner? So if you were looking either to the ACA or maybe you're in a different state or a different country, are you really hoping to get mentorship? Are you looking for funding? Do you want connectivity and networking and introductions? Do you want peer-to-peer support or service provider support? I see a C. We want all of the, yep, all of the above is nice. Strategic relationships and talent is a big one. Love that. C, D, connection with other founders. Okay. Awesome. Well, keep those coming. It's interesting to see what founders are looking for and start with kind of a customer-based approach to what we're serving. Oops. Let me scroll back up. I clicked too fast. Sorry about that. Here we go. So for founder support in that connective tissue, with the ACA and public agencies, what they can offer is all of those pieces, and we'll talk about the process and how. But like I said, with the sum of its parts, it's not just any single resource that's going to ignite kind of the founders in a community, but a way to bring all of these resources to fruition for the entrepreneurial ecosystem. From an agency perspective, the first thing that we needed to do when building out our ecosystem was understand who was out there. And it can be very difficult in these new and budding innovation ecosystems to find the other founders. And I don't know if there's people joining us from other locations, but it can be a lonely job being a founder. And as a government agency, and even for our community groups or investors, just knowing what startups exist in your community can be difficult. And so this is something that we looked at 10 years ago to say, well, what even is out there in Arizona? And that was when we launched the Arizona Innovation Challenge. The Arizona Innovation Challenge is one of the largest business plan and pitch competitions in the country. We award $1.5 million in non-dilutive grant funding per cycle to startups in the state. And I can talk all about this program, but really the value is across the board here. But one of the great pieces that this brought forth when we started it 10 years ago is that $1.5 million really got people coming out of the woodwork and saying, hey, we're here, we're a startup, we'd like to apply for this, so that even the companies that didn't become awarded as an AIC winner, we knew that they were there and we could wrap our arms around them with other resources. We were able to identify them, corral them, and put them into a community. And so that was a really important first step in kind of identifying who was out there. The next question, though, once we knew all of the startups that were in the state, was still one of, okay, we've got this nascent startup community, but how do we really help add polish to those companies? How do we support them so that they are ready for investors, so that they're ready to bring on talent, so that they're ready to scale? It's one thing to know that the startups exist. It's another to know that they're high quality, scalable, venture backable startups. So once we created the Innovation Challenge, we knew we needed the next step in that process, and we created an accelerator called Venture Ready. And so this was really that next phase in ecosystem development for us, which was taking our founders in through the funnel of the challenge and then putting them through kind of this accelerator process, which really polished them and got them ready for investors. Any thriving ecosystem needs high quality startups. So we took the startups that were here and we made them high quality through Venture Ready. And we did that with the support of mentors, with investors, with education and all of these other pieces. And we'll get into that in a moment. And so if you are maybe a public agency official in a different area, adding this kind of mechanism, which is going to improve and enhance the quality of your startups, is really key in helping advance the ecosystem. So then the last question we asked ourselves with founders as we started this process was, how do we scale this effort? We were finding 10 companies per cycle through the Innovation Challenge. We were putting them through an accelerator. And so each year we would end up between 10 and 20 really amazing startups in the state. But we knew from our challenge that there were thousands out there. And so we asked ourselves, how do we take these same best practices and apply them to a larger group of founders? And the answer to that question is always through technology. And so recently we launched an innovation network here in Arizona that provides a ton of resources and support for our founders. It connects them to mentors. It's going to take them through education and training. There's learning courses, there's templates and idea accelerators all on this platform so that we can take the lessons we learned over the past decade and continue to apply them to a larger and larger audience of startups in the state. So if you are a state or if you're thinking about ecosystem development more holistically, once it's kind of a nail it and scale it. We nailed it through those first two efforts, and now we're in the process of scaling those same services so that we can expand the success of our ecosystem development. And then finally, for founders, we provide a lot of education. Right now, we're in the process of delivering an entrepreneurial finance series. It's been a 4-panel series over the past several months, kind of taking founders through a step-by-step process of building their capital strategy, to structuring their cap table, to planning that fundraise. And then our last session is going to be on developing option pools for their employees. And so that type of education for people that might be first-time founders maybe didn't go and get that MBA to learn how to do this startup thing, but are really bootstrapping it. We want to be able to educate them to increase their odds of success. So this is a great area for the ACA to play because we have access to so many experts in our network, and we want to share those learnings with founders across the state. And I would recommend other groups in here. And I know our community builders provide a lot of education and training as well. And this is something that I think there's a lot of value in. So what's been the impact of that? Just those programs alone, we've named 100 companies to our portfolio of AIC winners over the past 10 years. Through that, we've had 14 exits, and those companies have gone on to raise over $600 million since being named an AIC winner. That portfolio alone is valued at over $1 billion, but the startups in general in Arizona have gone on to raise over $2.3 billion in capital since we really started putting these initiatives forward. And so we're really excited about the founder momentum that is happening for our startups in the community. So that's one piece, but all of that success is in large part thanks to the mentors. And we've got a great mentor on the call to speak to some of this. But if there are mentors on the call, and maybe this is just a call out to Tom, I'd love to hear from you because everyone recognizes that mentorship is so important in these communities, but why do it? What's motivating you to get engaged with these startups? Is it because you want something to do with your time? Is it because you love technology and startups? Are you looking to give back to the community? I'd love to hear from any mentors on the call about what motivates you. I see, like to give back to the community. It's a really important one and something that we take full advantage of. We call it a return on involvement. See, looking for that next opportunity. Okay, I think that's important for mentors as well because they also have their eyes on what comes next. And this is a great way to sort of scan the state marketplace. Looking for investment opportunities. That's a really great one because they want access to the newest, most exciting companies. Great. And for founders on the call, how do you find mentors? What's your process for establishing those connections with people that might be able to help move your business forward? Through people you've worked with before, through your established networks, events, LinkedIn, maybe community groups that you're involved in. Everyone recognizes that mentors are an integral part of moving startups in a community forward. But I think a lot of people will tell you that finding those mentors or building those authentic connections and keeping them engaged can be really difficult. And so I wanted to share some of the ways at the ACA that we've managed to do that. We have a bank of over 400 mentors that stay committed and involved with our startup programs over the course of the year. And they've been doing it now for years. And so what I've heard from them is it's important to kind of hold their attention because they're very successful, they're busy, they've got a lot of options and opportunities. And so how do you do that? And so we've gone through a number of programs on how to retain mentors. We give them networking opportunities. We provide them with those look at future investments. I saw someone mention stay up to date on the latest technologies. I've mentioned the Arizona Innovation Challenge. We ask and invite our mentors to serve as judges for that process as well. Within that Venture Ready Accelerator program, we assign mentors to each company and ask mentors to serve on panels where they pitch every single month. And so there's a continuous calendar of events that's taking place that continues to bring our mentors back to the table. Because if you go too long without kind of any touches or invitations or opportunities, they start to forget. Something else that I've heard and noticed from our mentors that others can kind of take through is that they really value the vetting that we do with our startups to say, I want a mentor, but I don't want to speak to a company that's still in idea phase that has no idea what they're doing. Or I'm not ready to work with a startup that isn't serious about their startup. And so what we do for our mentors is we do that curation, we do that vetting so that they know when they're getting involved, they're coming into established programs, they're coming into established companies. And because we get to work with the best startups in the state, that also attracts the best mentors in the state. And so I think it's really important for other groups out there trying to figure out how to better engage mentors. It's kind of like data. You want good data in so that you have good data to work with. You want valuable startups, high potential startups to come in so that you can use that to attract high potential mentors. Venture ready. This is the accelerator that I spoke about. So every company in our accelerator, typically 10 per cohort, is assigned an EIR, an entrepreneur in residence. This is someone who's ideally meeting with their startup once a week over a 9-month period. So talk about engagement. This is going to keep them on the hook. And then every month within that 9-month period, we have some sort of panel or event which asks mentors to come in and give feedback. So this is an audience of between 8 and 14 mentors per panel that we're engaging through that initiative as well. And so this is a really quick, light way to get their involvement. They don't have to commit for the 9-month period if they just want to serve on a panel. It's sort of a la carte. And so if they would like to go deep into a project they're working on for a few months and then come up for air and serve on a panel, we've got such a large bank that it's okay for them to kind of come and go. And so finding opportunities that fit your mentor needs and desires is important. And I like to call it sort of an a la carte menu of options that our mentors can sort of choose from to see what fits their interest and time availability. And then that innovation network that I mentioned is sort of the same engagement level for our mentors. So in the way that founders can go onto our platform and find mentors to connect with, mentors can also go onto our platform and make themselves available. So really this is about cutting out the middleman. No longer do mentors need to come to me and say, hey, I'm interested in talking to bioscience companies, I'm available. They can put their time availability, their areas of expertise, their functional backgrounds, industry verticals on our network and be found by founders across the state. This is really exciting value proposition for our mentors in the state because it allows them to kind of serve at their ease. They can set their schedule. Think of like Calendly or a visible Outlook sort of thing that others can go and identify, and it keeps them kind of engaged. They have the opportunity to accept or deny requests from founders, and it's a nice way to keep them active in our programs. And then finally, mentors are just like founders in that they're looking to establish their own network. They're looking to grow professionally as well. And so finding opportunities for them to have their own mentor engagement, mentor to mentor learning and opportunities, trainings. And so at the ACA, we've established monthly mentor breakfasts. We've been doing those virtually since COVID started. But that's a great opportunity for successful professionals to come together, learn about the latest updates happening in the state, connect with one another and build out their own network, and get tips to stay sharp in this space. And so not only do you want mentors to kind of serve the founders in your community, but you also want those mentors to feel fulfilled and professionally challenged as well. And finding opportunities for that is important. So like I mentioned, we've got over 400 mentors within our database. They deliver over 360 mentoring hours per year, which is just an immeasurable value to our community. And that's just from within the ACA. I know our community partners leverage mentors as well. And we're able to help them by growing their network and getting them professional development. And they're able to help us by being our ears on the ground. Here's these companies that you need to know about. Here's gaps that we're seeing across the market. Here's programs that you should think about introducing or improving. And so it's a great relationship between the ACA, the ecosystem, and our mentors. We tell everyone our programs are mentor-led. So let's move now into investors. Ever since coming to the state of Arizona, I've heard people talk about the fact that it is hard to raise capital in Arizona. It is becoming easier, and that is a huge, important, critical point for any ecosystem, is that you need capital in order to help these companies scale and grow. And so how do we help attract capital and investment to the state and to our founders? Well, we've done that through a variety of methods, through events, through conferences, through tax credits and incentives. And so we're going to talk about some of that and what investors look for and how we've tried to make their lives easier so that they can invest in our companies. So the Angel Tax Credit is first and foremost. This is a program that's been around for several years and is incredibly popular. Basically, it says that if you're an accredited investor that invests in an Arizona startup, you're going to get 10% off your Arizona state income taxes for the next 3 years, up to 35% for bio and life science companies. And so what does this do? This incentivizes high net worth individuals to invest in Arizona tech startups, which is really that kind of greasing of the wheels to get that money into the ecosystem. And it's working. Since 2006, over 197 certified companies have received over 1,000 investments through our program. It continually gets refilled, our kind of bucket of monies, and lasts about 3 to 4 months each year because it's so popular. That tax incentive creates additional tax revenue. It helps with early stage capital, which is a really difficult stage in any ecosystem. And it continues to connect the dots between our high net worth angel investor community and our tech startups. So it's really started to act as a bridge and the glue between these programs. And so if you're in a state or if you aren't familiar with this angel tax credit, I think this has gone a long way in helping develop the ecosystem here in Arizona. We've also made a very strong effort to build bridges and relationships with our local investor groups. We've got Joanne McMaster from Desert Angels on the line. We're going to hear from her in just a moment. But this has been really important between kind of creating a symbiosis. We curate and develop these companies through our programs, pass them their way. They've got great insight and information on the companies that are coming our way. And so it's really kind of a team effort to build up and to fund these Arizona companies. And we're really, really proud to sit on at the table with all of these organizations and kind of offer perspective, membership, funding, that sort of thing. We also launched a venture partner program. So for those that aren't familiar with VCs, their most valuable asset is time. And for many of these VCs, they're sitting on the coasts and they don't know a lot about Arizona. And so if they were to come here, it might take them a lot of time to start to dig in and figure out who the best companies are. So we tried to make that easier for them. We've established relationships with VCs across the country, specifically in San Francisco Bay Area and New York, and said, instead of kind of coming to Arizona on your own and trying to navigate that whole process, tell us your investment thesis and what you're looking for, and we will curate those meetings for you for when you arrive. So instead of needing to spend a week in Arizona kind of networking to find the best companies, they can come in for a day and have 8 back-to-back-to-back meetings. And so what we believe is really trying to find ways to reduce the friction between VCs and startups and make it as easy as possible for them to connect with as many high quality startups as possible. It's a white glove concierge service. They can use our office space, they can use our admin services. And this is a way to just, like I said, make it as easy as possible. And this has gone a long way in really attracting VCs to Arizona. It's a differentiator. Other states are not doing this. And they can say, well, why would I go to states X, Y, or Z when I can go to Arizona and they're going to provide me with all this support and point me to all these great companies. Additionally, we've partnered with Stout Street Capital to put on the Unmet Arizona Conference. Some of you might have heard about this, but we actually launched it last spring and did another version this October, both virtually because of COVID. It was the largest investor conference in our history. We had over 200 investors for the spring. And over 70 Arizona companies were represented in the spring as well. The idea of this conference is to meet the unmet need of capital in the middle of the country. And so when we heard about it, we pounced on it because that's Arizona. And so by partnering with Stout Street and putting on this conference, we're able to connect the dots between our founders here in Arizona and investors from around the country looking to invest outside of the coasts. It's been hugely successful. Some of our companies were able to raise over $10 million from the spring version. We're still waiting on kind of the term sheets and data to come back from this past October session. But it's been such a pleasure to kind of see the momentum happening of investors very quickly being able to find high quality Arizona companies. And so if you're in other states or trying to figure out how to get that momentum, these are the types of opportunities or conferences and events that really create that momentum for investors in a community. And then finally, with VCs, it's all about relationship building. There's a huge trust factor. And so it's a little bit more difficult now with COVID, but you can't stay in your own backyard. Before COVID started, we were taking regular trips to California, to the Bay Area, to New York. We've even got partnerships in Israel as a big startup community to really identify which VCs are interested in investing outside of their geographies and to start to grease the wheels on those relationships to say, have you looked at Arizona? Have you considered our companies? The other cool thing that you can do with these envoy trips is sell them on the Arizona value proposition. So Arizona is a great place to launch, start, and scale a business. And so maybe they have portfolio companies in California that can't keep up with the cost of talent, can't keep up with the cost of space. And so not only can we ask them to invest in our Arizona companies, but we can pitch them on relocating their California portfolio companies. This has been a huge part of our success as well, and has really helped us build out our database of investors so that when founders come to us asking for support, we're ready to make those connections. So our last stakeholder group that I'd love to talk about before we get into our panel is our community builders, which are really an important component of our Arizona innovation ecosystem. We are so honored and proud to partner with partners across the state, whether they're events and conferences, local community groups, co-working spaces, the universities. All of these people play a critical role in supporting founders. And so we want to be able to support them. As you can see from this slide, there's endless amounts of community partners that we're proud to be associated with. And a cool thing about from a public agency perspective is that we have a seat at all of these tables. And so it's really not up to any one group or individual to kind of set the direction. It's really a grassroots effort. But by being at the table of all these groups, we can connect the dots and we can kind of influence where we're going as a community. And so it's important for community groups to have a relationship with all of the partners across the state, to have open channels of communication, to be supportive of them in however they need, so that you've built that trust and that influence so that you are working together towards a common shared goal and moving in the same direction. One of the things I love about Arizona is it's the first place I've lived where it feels like everyone has a shared goal and is moving in the same direction. So I want to talk about Venture Madness. We've got the chairwoman of Invest Southwest with us that puts on Venture Madness. She'll be speaking in just a moment as well. But this is a huge community event that brings together investors and founders. It's been going on for a long time here in the Valley. And we've been very proud to support them, not just through sponsorship, but through technology and infrastructure, through mentorship support. And so we'll learn more about kind of the effect that that has had. Phoenix Startup Week, for those of you that have had the pleasure to participate in that as well, is one of the largest grassroots Startup Week events in the country. And we've been proud to partner with them as well through sponsorship, through funding, through programmatic support. I had the pleasure of sitting on the planning team for that last year as well. And so really going back to that seat at the table. Our co-working spaces, we have a ton of amazing groups in the state that are working to provide space and mentorship and coaching, whether it's Galvanize, whether it's AZ Co-work. There's a number of others we can talk about that have really done a lot in providing a physical space that brings together the community as well. And so you cannot ignore the fact that these people are hotspots for founders and therefore play a critical role in the development of the ecosystem. And then finally, the universities. Not only are founders coming out of these universities, research and patents are coming out of these universities, accelerators exist here, talent pools exist here. And so any innovation ecosystem needs to be attaching itself to the local universities in their communities, because what they're doing around innovation is so important, and you don't want to be working in silos outside of them. You need to be partnering, you need to understand kind of what they're working on and how you can build off of one another. So I know the University of Arizona has a great innovation center. We're lucky to have the leader of that, their venture program, serving as a mentor for many of our programs. There's got to be that cross-pollination between the universities. Okay, so I've spoken a lot, and I'm excited to introduce our panel now. Like I mentioned, we've got Joanne McMaster, the head of the Desert Angels, our local Tucson-based investor angel group. We have Diana Vowles joining, who's the chairwoman of Invest Southwest this year, and previously was at Galvanize as one of their leaders. Eli Chimoni, who's a founder and CEO of Neon, one of the recent graduates from our Venture Ready Accelerator and a great startup here in Arizona. And finally, Tom Blondie, who is sort of mentor extraordinaire and has been involved in a number of our programs. So before we jump into questions, I'd love to have you introduce yourselves, panelists, and talk a little bit about your backgrounds. So Joanne?
Yeah, thank you. And thanks, Mark, for hosting the event today. That was great information in your presentation, by the way. It's good to see everybody. My name is Joanne McMaster. I'm the CEO of the Desert Angels. And as Mark mentioned, we are a regional angel group based here in Southern Arizona. Just for those on the call who may not be from Arizona, we have a network of angel groups around our state. We work closely with, for example, ATI up in the Phoenix area. We work also with angel groups around the region and around the country to syndicate deals, which brings value both in terms of dollars here to the state and better service to the companies that we work with. And I'll stop there because I think you're going to want us to talk about our relationship with ACA in the Q&A. Is that right?
Yes, absolutely. Thanks, Joanne. Diana, go ahead.
Great. I'm Diana Vowles. I am the chair of Invest Southwest and Venture Madness. I am also a mentor for Arizona Commerce Authority's Venture Ready program. So I've worked with a lot of those startups. And I previously launched and ran Galvanize for the first 4 years of its operations in Phoenix. So I have heavy involvement with the entire startup community and the ACA in Phoenix.
Awesome. Thank you, Diana, and thanks for joining. Eli?
Hey everyone, my name is Eli Shimoni. I'm a serial entrepreneur. I've been in the Arizona Phoenix area for about 10 years. And out of this area, I've launched 4 companies, 2 of which have been acquired. And currently I'm the founder and CEO of Neon.
Thank you, Eli. And Tom, Blondie, talk to us. Oh, you're on mute, Tom.
Oh, I was enjoying that. I was really gonna roll, man, oh man. Sorry about that. Serial entrepreneur. My wife and I moved here at the turn of the century, and we started several companies here. I've been involved in 12 startups where I was an employee and an investor, and probably a total of 50 where I've just been helping. I enjoy the mentorship part of that. I'll talk a little bit more about that later.
Thanks, Tom. So let's start with you, Eli, just because I mentioned most things start with the founder entrepreneur, and then we kind of all wrap our arms around that individual. What are some of the resources that you've taken advantage of from a state level? What has been most impactful? If you could talk a little bit about those.
Yeah, absolutely. So when we joined the Innovation Challenge, the company had a business model that's been running for about 2 years. And about 2 months into the program, we had a pretty big competitor kind of jump on the market and a platform kind of basically block us from expanding. So we were literally faced with figuring out a way to pivot the model and adjust accordingly. So some of the biggest things that I feel I've used over the past 10 years in every company is that mentoring and networking programs. The community here is super supportive. If I email anyone from Tom to Diana to anyone really in the community, they're willing to grab coffee and really just help me as a CEO make better decisions. Anything from hiring to financial reviews to business model reviews to connecting to the right people. And through the ACA program, one of our EIR, Margie Trailer, has actually had a significant impact on our business and continues to work with us on a weekly basis to improve the business. So I would say number one for me is personally as a growth, and which impacts the company, is having that network of advisors and mentors that are willing to meet with me and advise me on the next steps to take in order to grow the company and help reach the goals that I actually want to reach. Second, I would say is access to funding, whether it is local or whether it's connection to other investor groups outside of Arizona. I think that has been impactful for me over the past 10 years, whether I'm raising angel funding or seed funding, and even getting to that stage to, preparing your data room and preparing all the documents and the financial models to get to that stage. I would say probably those are the 2 things that have impacted my success over the past 10 years.
Fantastic. And I'll come back to you to learn more about what we made your life easier and how we could make it even easier in those regards. But you mentioned mentorship. And so I'd love to go over to Tom and just kind of ask, what motivates you to mentor and why keep coming back after all these years?
Yeah, good question. The answer is probably going to be silly to a lot of people listening right now, but it feels good. It really is an incredible experience, especially if you take it seriously as a mentor. It's very rewarding. You get a chance to meet, see, and get involved in exciting things that are going on out there and stay engaged in the community you're involved in, which is our ecosystem here in Arizona, but also the aspects of technology that are advancing around us. And the third thing is, I think, the extension of your network. Mentors are valuable to the mentees for a lot of reasons, but one of them is the network that you have. And it isn't long after a startup founder is often running that they can contribute as a mentor in a variety of ways. Mentors are, they have a purpose in cycles as these companies go through them. So it feels good.
And Tom, you've started to be a great source of finding and sourcing other mentors. And you say, Mark, I want you to connect with this person, or I'm ready to get them plugged into these programs. And I'm just curious what you saw or experienced that you said, I'm ready to put my name and reputation out there as kind of putting a stamp of approval on these programs to get others involved. And so when it comes from a sort of ACA programmatic or public agency perspective, what needed to be true before you were willing to kind of recommend it to your peers and an additional network?
Yeah, good question. Well, despite my youthful appearance, I'm quite old. I've been around a long time. I've lived and worked in Chicago, Atlanta, LA, Denver, New York, Fairfax, Virginia, and now Arizona for the last 20 years. And a lot of what goes on in Arizona revolves around second homes, high net worth individuals who have retired here. And a lot of them would come here and engage me in a golf game. And we would start to talk about what's keeping me busy and what keeps me energized. And I started talking about the things we're involved in with the ACA. So that kind of initiated several conversations about when you're here in Arizona, instead of just sucking life out of our wonderful weather we have, clogging our roads and our grocery stores, why don't you guys give back a little bit? And that started me on a nice campaign of just calling my friends that had their second homes here, seeing if they would get interested. That started to grow. And what started happening, I mentioned this to Mark and Andy a couple of weeks ago, is about a month and a half ago, I started getting email and calls from a variety of individuals in Washington, Colorado, Chicago, New York, and DC, ironically where I used to live, asking, what's going on down there in Arizona? Why are we hearing and reading and seeing so much about the energy, the ecosystem that is building down there? And I think the answer is really simple, although it takes a little while to explain it to these outsiders, is what the ACA, I think, has done is and I think Mark and Andy call it the connective tissue, but they've begun to put the pieces together. We've always had these components, but we've never had a focus or a drive for it. Today, if I get a call from a young entrepreneur and they want to know who can you connect me with, I have a brand new resource that I never had before in this innovation database that I can reach out to, because I have probably forgotten 30% of the people that I've met in the process. The ACA has brought it together. The second part is the ACA keeps us trained. So as mentors, we go to monthly breakfasts where they used to provide a nice breakfast and coffee, and they don't do that anymore. I don't know why. It must be a budget thing. And we learn a lot. We are taught how to give feedback in a more professional manner than just, I've had years of experience and here's the way I'm going to talk to you kind of a thing. So we get educated in that regard. And then, as I mentioned earlier, it just helps us connect and bring more to the table. The other aspect I think I want to bring up here quickly is I got a lot of venture capital buddies that have called me and said, look, with COVID, with the pandemic, we're learning we can be productive with virtual workers. Arizona has the cost of living, a quality of life that we envy, but we're not going to move our headquarters there. Our charter doesn't really allow us to do that. But we wonder about setting up an operation down there and having our employees work out of their homes or co-working space. And so I've been connecting those people with the ACA, with Mark and with Andy. So the word is beginning to get out there. You hate to take advantage of a pandemic in that way, but I think people are beginning to realize that we've got a great quality down here of life, a great cost of living. Our universities are producing some top-notch individuals. So, hey, let's take advantage of that and not have to compete internally in San Francisco or Seattle or Boulder or whatever for those resources. So sorry about the long-windedness.
No, I appreciate it. Thank you, Tom. You and Eli both touched upon kind of investment and venture. And so I want to go over to Joanne. So Desert Angels is one of the oldest angel groups in the country, if I understand correctly. And Joanne, I'm sure you've seen a real transformation sort of happening across the state over the past several years. And so I'm interested in your take on kind of what's happening in Arizona, what has made your life as an investor with Desert Angels easier, and some of the trends that you're seeing and what you think the cause of those trends are.
Yeah, wow, a lot of questions in there. Thank you. And Tom, great points. We are one of the oldest angel groups, and some days I feel like one of the oldest investors, although I know I only look 25, so thank you for that. It's been remarkable. And I'd like to actually talk first about my relationship with ACA, because many of you may not know, but I am first and foremost a founder. We took a company public here in Arizona. I ran an incubator, well, actually the statewide program, which I saw on your list, AZBIA. And for the last 6 years, I led the venture development efforts for University of Arizona, so spinning out all the startup companies. And now I'm thankfully in this role as CEO for the Desert Angels, and I'm so excited to be part of this next, this next phase for Desert Angels, and of course for me personally. But every step of that process, I mean, I'm an ecosystem builder, and I know most of you can identify with this. Every step of that process, ACA has played a pretty significant role. From my perspective as a founder, as an incubator person, and a mentor, working in the university and now with the Desert Angels. And I love the continuity that ACA brings to all of these players across the board. You know, Tom, I think you hit the nail on the head when you said, you know, ACA brings it together. I mean, you guys are the bubble gum, right? That makes all of us tick and run and go forward. And in that last, 20 years, I have seen a lot of change. But I would like to talk a little bit about where the Desert Angels are. We just did a 10-year look back of our portfolio companies in which our members have invested. And it's interesting, I discovered that 60% of those, so we actually looked at 95 companies. Our members invested about $47 million into those. And Desert Angels, by the way, is a membership organization of about 100 accredited and active angel investors who make their own decisions when they're making investments in companies. But of those 95 companies, about 60% of them took advantage of the Arizona tax credits. So thanks to ACA. I'm a little concerned because that program is changing. And so I would encourage everyone on this call to, urge your legislatures to renew the program. It's really important incentive both for our members and for the companies that apply. The second thing I discovered is really interesting. About 35% of all those companies are also AIC recipients. So recipients of the Innovation Challenge grant. And they've gone through the programs from ACA. And that tells me that we're working together as a continuum to help build these companies. So it's everything from ideation all the way through funding, right? We are working together with intention. I think one of the magazines said that about Arizona once many years ago, to serve startup companies. And I see that's the big change for us, that we are now doing that with intention, and we are helping these companies move forward. COVID, has given us an opportunity to broaden our scope and reach, both in terms of us attracting members and serving companies, but also in attracting new resources to Arizona. And so I'm super excited to be here now and be part of this process, and excited to see where ACA takes me next.
Thank you so much, Joanne. And those statistics and data is just really great. I'm so happy you mentioned that, and proud to be a part of that. I want to come over to Diana. Diana, you mentioned a great kind of background of Invest Southwest and Galvanize and working with all of these different groups. You've really wrapped your arm around this community for a long time. And so I'd love to kind of hear your perspective on how that has ebbed and flowed and what has really improved or been a change in that time to kind of add to this momentum, the role that your organizations have played in it, and maybe the role that the ACA has had in supporting you.
Sure. So in working in the Arizona ecosystem, I've learned a couple things, and I think positive things that are happening in recent years that have really driven us forward are one is the importance of a place for conversation. Geographically, we're pretty spread out in Arizona and in the Phoenix metro market, especially. But creating a place for the conversations to happen and a place for the humans to connect. And although we enjoyed the time when we could do this in person, and right now it's not necessarily in person, there's still virtual places to connect. And I found a very welcome, open community of people who are willing to help and support each other. The second piece I would say is the diversity of partnerships. In Arizona, I think it's critical that our partnerships involve corporate partnerships and startup partnerships. So it's not just a group of startups. There are very large corporations in Arizona who are trying to bring innovation into their organizations, and they want to act and think and behave more like the startups. So working with the ACA, I was able to, in much of my time at Galvanize, help bridge that gap. So it was exciting to have Banner Health with us in one area, and then we have small startups with us in other areas. So it was kind of a getting the best of both worlds. Now that I am chair of Invest Southwest, I am realizing more how ACA kind of deepens that partnership. So in addition to sponsorship of the Venture Madness Conference, which is hugely important, thank you, Mark, we also, ACA provides us other tools. So for example, we are able to benefit from a judging platform that ACA helps set us up with. And the exposure is huge. Since ACA came on board with Invest Southwest, we've had about 350 companies take part in the competition. And since our inception, Venture Madness companies have raised over $1 billion. So it's making a difference, and ACA was able to help us take it to the next level. Two other pieces where I think that the partnership is incredibly valuable is mentorship. Now, there is an overlap of mentorship between the Venture Ready program and Venture Madness, and that's okay. Many of the mentors are the same. I personally have mentored in both competitions, and it's helpful, and it speaks to the state of Arizona of people wanting to give back and help grow the community. I have learned so much from working with those mentors, so I'm gaining as much as I think I'm providing to the mentoring companies. But the connection to the expertise across the mentoring, it is incredibly valuable, and ACA helps facilitate that well, where I can be on a Venture Ready panel and I leave the panel thinking, wow, I learned so much today. I just hope I contributed as much. So I think those are the key pieces, and it's been a wonderful relationship with ACA, and we really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Diana. Oops, not maybe the appendix. We can stop screen sharing here, go here. With the last few minutes, I'd love to kind of, one, open it up. If there are people on the line that have questions, go ahead and throw it in the chat or the Q&A box. And while you're doing that, I'll just kind of open it up to our panelists and say, all of you have networks in other regions, have heard about kind of this movement towards ecosystem development. What have you heard is either going well in other places or is not going so well and is causing frustration among either founders, investors, mentors that you think they could learn from Arizona?
Yeah, I can take a stab at that. I've experienced a couple of different places, even in San Francisco. I think one thing that we have here is, I think like maybe 3 or 4 years ago, I start seeing this hashtag generosity under like the Yes Phoenix hashtag. And one thing that you'll notice in the community here is we feel very grateful when someone takes the time to actually mentor us and help us get to the goals that we want. And we kind of like feel an emotional obligation to also commit back to the community. So personally, I'm involved with ASU, with SeedSpot, with Cahoots, with a lot of different startups. And as Tom said, there are different mentors for the different stages of the startup. So I might be beneficial with the experience that I have for a startup still maybe in ideation and growth stage, while I maybe need a mentor that's a bit more advanced in terms of the growth and scale stages. So I feel that is one thing that I haven't seen in other communities is we literally wrap around each other. And even if an outsider comes in, I feel within 2 weeks, they'll like get to know everyone because everyone is kind of connected, and connecting those different pieces of the community is pretty easy, especially, pre-COVID days when events would get pretty heavy and you get to start seeing the same people around in the same event. So I would probably say that's something that's hard to see and hard to manifest in other areas because it's just kind of something that naturally happens. You can't really force it.
Eli, I think that's a great point and something I've noticed too. It's a cultural DNA thing of our ecosystem. And I think that is a grassroots-led effort that we've all rallied around. And so I would encourage other communities to try and replicate it. I wish I had the magic ingredients or recipe to tell you how, but it's something that I think really does set us apart. CJ, would you like to go ahead and kind of talk to your perspective on this?
Well, I wanted to chime in for a different reason. I sit on the Kaufman, I don't know what we call it, the eShip committee. I don't like the word committee, but it's all about ecosystem building. And it's many folks from around the country, educators, professionals, et cetera. And it's a 3-year effort about ecosystem building and tools, et cetera. And the interesting part is that every ecosystem is struggling. They realize the importance of ecosystem building, but they're all struggling with how to do it. And it is, despite 3 years of efforts with Kaufman, it's still very chaotic as far as what the right approach is. And so I don't have a solution here, but I'll tell you some of the problems, which is that, there are some that come in with, hey, here's a monolithic system where you can do it. And others look at Phoenix and Arizona of how we did it organically. And it's great to look at that, but then the question is, if you're another community, how do you replicate something organically to do it? So it's great that they can envy what we've done, but I don't even think we could duplicate it again, if we started it. So there's really no solution for it, but I can tell you that all over the country, it is very obvious that ecosystem building, deliberate ecosystem building is one of the top solutions to building a vibrant entrepreneurial community that creates companies and creates jobs.
Well, CJ, that's easy. Just send in my deck. It's got all the answers. I'll close out with one last question for our panelists, which is just kind of what would you like to see improve, or what are other things that communities can continue to enhance in order to drive the ecosystem development forward?
I think we can continue to grow and build our own by reaching out, and I think we all have a responsibility to do this, reach out to our networks in other markets and bring more of their expertise here, whether it's virtually or in person, or Tom mentioned helping companies set up locations here. But I think it's on us as leaders of the community to reach out to other communities and bring folks into our ecosystem.
Great point, Diana. I'm literally counting down to when I can get on a plane again, because I want to go on a coast-to-coast tour pitching our ecosystem. Anyone else have any ideas on kind of what we can keep doing?
Yeah, I'll just add one thing, and I'm going to take a page from the Tech Launch Arizona manual, which is make it happen. So that's Doug's mantra, hashtag make it happen. And I think it's about each of us engaging in whatever way we can. We all know people, we all have some kind of superpower. So, I would challenge everyone on the call today to reach out to a few of your friends and say, hey, how can I help you? And you might be surprised what kind of answers you get. Good way to move forward.
Fantastic. Thanks, Joanne.
I think the other thing I'm getting feedback on from other places is if you look at our last cohort in Venture Ready, the diversity in that group, male to female, international to domestic, was pretty damn impressive. And I remember Arizona when I first came here was pretty much an old boys network, an old white boys network, I might add. And it's not like that anymore. It's still got a long way to go, I must admit, but it is getting better and better. And I think we can continue to promote that as we show them the companies that have graduated, the fundraising that's going on, and the list of successful entrepreneurs that we're now producing into the, sending out into the world, Eli notwithstanding.
I mean, I think one thing we learned from Tom and Joanne's comments is if you work out of the Phoenix ecosystem, you're not going to age. So
We found the fountain of youth.
Everyone should move here because yeah, we found it. It's there.
Well, I want to take this one last opportunity to thank our panelists for their time and expertise. It's always a pleasure creating a space to talk, like Diana mentioned, and really enjoyed the conversation. It's left me feeling very proud of what we've built together and excited for what we're going to continue to build. Also want to give a thank you to CJ once again for helping plan, promote, and lead us on this Global Entrepreneurship Week journey. I hope this was a sufficient last session for the week. And thank you to our audience and participants for sticking with us for the last hour. It's been a lot of fun. If you do have any questions or thoughts or comments, I'll put my email in the chat. You're always welcome to shoot me a note. And I look forward to continuing the conversation with all of you. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you.